10. Paul Rudd, currently Ant-Man and formerly Chandler's co-star on Friends. For the last 2 seasons of Friends, Paul played Mike Hannigan, Phoebe's husband. While he was not on the show for super duper long, he did remember his time quite fondly. In an interview with Today, he said that the entire experience was very surreal. The entire crew were a blast, and there was definitely a lot of love on the set. In fact, he said that he felt lucky to be on such a historical sitcom. There are a handful of shows that are going to go down in history as sitcom staples, stuff that will be taught in classrooms. Friends is most certainly going to be on that list. At first, he was under the impression that they only wanted him for a few episodes, but it turns out that they liked his character and just kept writing him into the show week after week. And Paul was, of course, a free agent. When hearing of the passing of Matthew Perry, Paul shared his condolences, writing that words could not express how saddened he was to hear of Matthew's passing. He will be missed so very deeply. Despite rarely seeing this man for years, there is still so much love between them, and that right there is a good friend. Number 9, Aisha Tyler. Aisha played Charlie Wheeler on Friends, the love interest to David Schwimmer, and Matt LeBlanc, who played Ross and Joey respectively. In a guest role in the 9th season, only having spent a year with the cast on and off again, she grew close to the crew and remembers Matthew as an incredible performer with a solid work ethic and a massive heart. She wrote that he had a gentleness and generosity of spirit that was unparalleled, and went on to say that she learned how to tell a joke just by watching Matthew Perry work. She said that she would never forget the moment that he leaned into her on the first night of taping her very first episode just to tell her warmly to get ready for her life to change. Rest well, Matthew Perry. Thank you for the kindness and the laughter, and I think that about sums it up. Number 8, Paget Brewster. Paget Brewster has been in so many TV shows over the years that her face should definitely be familiar to you. Whether it's Criminal Minds, the final season of Community, or the sitcom Friends, where she played Kathy before her rise to glory. Kathy was a guest character in season 4, a character who inadvertently starts a love triangle between herself, Chandler, and Joey that quickly leads to a brief one-on-one relationship with Chandler. The two were together for a while until Paget's character cheats on Chandler to spite him for accusing her of cheating. While her time on screen was rough and rocky, off screen it was apparently the exact opposite. Working with Matthew Perry was a joy and a privilege according to her, as she wrote on her Twitter that she was very sad to hear about Matthew Perry. He was lovely to Paget on Friends and every time she saw him in the decades since. She then urged people to read his book, which I found and quickly added to my Audible wishlist because he actually narrates it himself, so I'm buying that very soon. It was his legacy to help, and she finished by saying that Matthew would not be resting in peace because he was already too busy making people laugh upstairs. Number 7, Morgan Fairchild. Morgan played a very important role on the show in the form of Chandler's mother, Nora Tyler Bing. Nora was the woman that Chandler claimed to be the reason that he used comedy as a defense mechanism because of her extracurricular activities outside of marriage. She once tried to seduce Ross, which led to a massive confrontation between herself and Perry. She posted on Twitter that she was heartbroken about the ultimate passing of her son, Matthew Perry. The loss of such a brilliant young actor is a shock, and she is sending love and condolences to his friends and his family, especially his father, John Bennett Perry, who worked with Morgan on Flamingo Road and Falcon Crest. He was a lucky man in life with a big family, both biological and not. Number 6, Maggie Wheeler, Janice from Friends. A sitcom character that will never be forgotten because once you hear her speak, you can't forget it. It just stays in your brain rent-free 24/7. What is there to say about her character? She made Chandler's life miserable, then fun, then miserable again, and just over and over and over. Being Chandler's on and off again girlfriend meant that Maggie was on set a lot and got to spend a very good portion of her life with Matthew and the rest of the friends. After hearing about his passing, she posted online clearly mourning the loss of a very close friend. She wrote, "The world will miss you, Matthew Perry. The joy that he brought to so many people in his short time on this earth will live on forever." She feels so blessed by every moment that she was able to share with him on set, and in an interview regarding Matthew earlier this year, she actually claimed that it was difficult for herself to read his memoir. He had been through so much and overcame struggle after struggle after struggle, saying that she was so proud of this man and what he had become, and that he was extremely brave to be sharing his story with the world. Number 5, the co-creators. Marta Kaufman, David Crane, and Kevin Bright are the co-creators and executive producers of Friends. Without these three brilliant people, the show may not exist, and if it did, who knows who would be in the cast. They shared their condolences in a joint statement on CBS News this past Sunday. They said that they were shocked and deeply saddened by their beloved friend Matthew's passing. It still seems impossible. All they can say is that they feel that their lives have been blessed for having him as a part of them. They continued to say that he was a brilliant talent, and it's cliche to say that an actor makes a role their own, but in Matthew's case, there were no truer words. From the first day that they first heard and saw him embodying the role of Chandler Bing, there was nobody else to be him. They will always cherish the joy, the light, and the blinding intelligence that he brought to every moment. Not just his work, but in his life as well. He was always the funniest person in the room, and more than that, he was the sweetest, with a grieving, selfless heart. They send their love to his family and friends, ending by saying that this was truly the one where our hearts were broken. Number 4. Warner Brothers. The company that produced the show Friends reacted to Perry's passing in a company statement released over the weekend. The company claimed to be devastated by Matthew's passing, as he was a dear friend to everyone, especially the people at the studio. Matthew was an incredibly gifted actor and an indelible part of the Warner Brothers television group family. The impact of his comedic genius was felt around the world, and his legacy will live on in the hearts of millions. It is a heartbreaking day, and they send their love to his family, his loved ones, and his devoted fans. Number 3. The main cast. So far, the main cast, Matt LeBlanc, Jennifer Aniston, Courtney Cox, Lisa Kudrow, and David Schwimmer, have yet to say anything online, but it's because they're currently preparing a release joint statement together, according to some inside sources. Let's give these guys a break, considering one of their closest friends just passed away, and there is still no real clear indication as to why or how or what happened. Like, you can speculate all you want, I don't know anything, so I'm not gonna say anything. The crew are more than likely spending their time right now just reconnecting over their loss, trying to piece together how it happened or why. But trying to piece together how or why won't help, but deciding how to move on is the only thing that they can do next. I wish I had more to say for you about this, but like I said, the cast are still grieving right now, so let's just give them a chance to chill for a minute, because the first thing that they decided to do was not post on Twitter, it was to probably hug each other. Number 2, Shannen Doherty. Though never a co-star on Friends, they were briefly co-stars together in the series Beverly Hills 90210, but it turns out that they actually have known each other a lot longer than that. Following Matthew's passing, Shannen posted a lengthy tribute to Instagram about growing up with Matthew. Their friendship spanned a long time, a lifetime according to her. She is aware that many people are hurting, especially the small crew of them that spent time together as kids. She said that she could be more poetic in the moment, but that at the time, shock and sadness had prevailed. There is not a ton to say there, no jokes to be made, just a childhood friend missing her buddy. Taking the top spot on this list is everyone. Matthew Perry was an incredible performer, and despite his struggles in life, he was able to make a massive impact on people around the world. Now, whether it was through the show Friends, his memoir, the movie 17 again, there are so many reasons to love this man. I've personally only ever seen Friends all the way through one time, and it was a great show. Honestly, like, better than the jokes and the set was just the chemistry between the main cast. You could just tell that these people actually really cared about each other off camera. They were legit friends. Like, it's not a pun, they were friends. It's not something that everyone can say about their co-stars. Now, when I say everyone in this entry, I do mean everyone. Like, every celebrity has been posting some kind of a reaction or a condolence online. Khloe Kardashian, Hank Azaria, Tom Green, and even before filming this, I found out that Adele stopped her concert midway through over the weekend just so they could share a moment of silence and pay tribute to Matthew Perry. That is so cool. Adele stopped singing so she could be like, Chandler's gone, rest in peace. Like, who else could do that? Now, we hope Mr. Perry is in a better place and that he knows that he's touched the hearts of millions around the world. Number 10, Tina Turner. She was simply the best. Better than all of the rest. Tina Turner is considered one of the original queens of rock and roll. Between the early 1950s and the mid 2000s, Tina Turner was ripping her way through country after country, delivering hit after hit. What's Love Got to Do With It? Simply the Best, Acid Queen, and those are just some of the songs that were gifted to us during her time as a solo artist. Before divorcing her evil ex, Ike Turner, the couple would perform together as Ike and Tina. Tina's real name was Anna Mae Bullock, and the name Tina was actually forced on her by Ike Ike as a way of controlling her. As many now know, Ike was an absolutely horrible person to Tina, and he did things that I can't talk about on this channel. Which is why, after so many years of overcoming obstacle after obstacle, it crushed the world when Tina was taken from us at the age of 83 on May 24th in 2023. She will always be remembered as a pure soul with a voice of gold. We had so much respect for this woman. She took a name that was meant to bring her down and turned it into a legend. Number 9. Jerry Springer. Well, our guest today may be a little controversial, but what the heck. Words surely spoken many times by the man that they call Jerry Springer. A name that surely sparks the visual of a fight breaking out on stage and some low-grain cameras capturing it all in front of a live studio audience. The good old days of TV. He hosted The Jerry Springer Show from 1999 to 2016, broadcasting over 1,900 episodes for our viewing pleasure. For anyone that doesn't know, Jerry was known for bringing controversial figures on his show to either discuss or confront the situations surrounding their presence. He brought in men with white cloaks, people who married horses. The spectrum of his guests is wide, which is why his show was just so much fun to watch. It was sad when news broke of his death in 2023 following a long and strenuous battle with pancreatic cancer. Here's hoping that wherever he is, it's just not in the middle of an onstage brawl. Number 8. Angus Cloud. This is the most recent and honestly one of the most devastating entries on this list. Angus portrayed the universally loved character Fez on the show Euphoria, acting as Rue's dealer, aka Zendaya. This past Monday, the Oakland Fire Department was called to his home in California, where he was found deceased, and he had recently been suffering with the loss of his father, which many believe may have led to his passing. Cloud was set to star in several projects in the next few years, as his career had just started thanks to the success of Euphoria. While there is currently no confirmation on the exact cause of his passing, Cloud had a long history with substance control issues and is part of the reason that he delivered such an incredible performance on the show, being able to tap into his real life traumas and use them for his character. Many believe he may have had some type of overdose following the passing of father, but like I said, there is no confirmation. I'm not gonna make any jokes here or say anything to make this a light moment. This guy was an incredible performer, and from what I've been able to read, he was genuinely a wonderful human being. So rest in peace, Angus. Number 7. Sinead O'Connor. Sinead has been serenading people with her voice for a long time, first releasing an album in 1987 called The Lion and the Cobra, and it charted across the globe immediately. Since then, she had a steady career performing in concerts and on talk shows around the world, and in 1992, she made TV history after being banned from Saturday Night Live for standing in front of a live audience and ripping up a photo of the Pope on stage. Now, there was a reason for this, because she was an activist and was simply trying to protest the Catholic Church because they were doing some gross, shady stuff behind the scenes. I'm sorry, did I say were? I meant are. The cause of Sinead passing has not been released to the public, but unfortunately many fans are claiming that it might have something to do with struggles with mental health in recent history, as well as her troubled past with her family. Regardless of why or how it happened, we are very sad to see another talented artist lost in 2023. Number 6. Paul Rubens. Another celebrity that was lost this past week was Mr. Paul Rubens, who many may know as the goofy bike enthusiast Pee Wee Herman. Paul first rose to fame thanks to his character of Pee Wee getting his own movie in 1985, directed by Tim Burton. The movie was so successful that Pee Wee got a morning show on CBS called Pee Wee's Playhouse. Unfortunately, Paul's reputation was slightly tainted in 1991 following an indecent exposure charge after he was feeding the geese at a movie theater. But it was the 90s, and that wasn't even close to the worst thing to happen that year, so he quickly bounced back into the world of acting and starred in movies like Mystery Men and Blow alongside Johnny Depp. Paul had been fighting a long and difficult battle with cancer, something that nobody was aware of until he passed. Much like Chadwick Boseman, it seems like he didn't want his final days to be spent surrounded by people who were prepared for him to go. Instead, he lived his life and he went out on his own terms. So, as someone who grew up with Pee Wee, that one stings. Number 5. Lance Reddick. Good evening, Mr. Wick. Welcome to the Continental. Lance Reddick starred in many TV movies and made small appearances on sitcoms in his early days of acting, but he first broke onto the big screen starring as Anton Lafarge in the 1998 film Great Expectations, which was a modernization of Charles Dickens' classic story of the same name, following a painter in New York City pursuing his childhood love. The film starred Ethan Hawke in the leading role, Gwyneth Paltrow, Hank Azaria, Robert De Niro, but it was Lance that stole the show, and he went on to star in several big-budget projects over the years, eventually landing a role on the hit TV thriller series The Wire as Cedric Daniels. He starred alongside actors like Keanu Reeves, Denzel Washington, Channing Tatum, but the attention was always drawn to him for every moment that he was on screen. Earlier this year, a congestive heart disease took Lance from the world at 61 years old. That's right, the man was only in his 60s. Like, look at him, that was great, good for him. Lucky for us, there was one movie left to be released following Lance's passing called White Men Can't Jump, and it is now available on Disney Plus with Lance starring as one of the main characters, Benji. So if you're missing him, check it out. Number 4. Richard Belzer. In the criminal justice system, the people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups: the police, who investigate crime, and the district attorneys, who prosecute the offenders. These are their stories. Chung-chung! This is the introduction to one of my father's favorite TV shows of all time, Law and Order. Since the day I was brought home, the legendary intro and song was constantly on my screen. I practically grew up with the Special Victims Unit and its team. Richard Belzer played John Munch, a retired detective who returns to the force as a sergeant assigned to the SVU. Richard played Munch for 326 episodes before the show was taken off air in 2016. That didn't mark the end of Richard's acting days, as he went on to star in the popular Robert De Niro pick The Comedian, in which he played a fictionalized version of himself. Fortunately for SVU fans, Richard passed away in February of this year, following years of respiratory and circulatory complications. Looks like crime in the afterlife will never go unpunished again, though. If there is crime, I don't know, do people still do that when they pass away? Number 3. David Crosby. While this last name sounds familiar, David shares no relation to the hockey legend Sidney, which is shocking because he has 6 kids. You would think that one of them would be a hockey player. David Crosby made up a third of the legendary folk rock group Crosby, Stills, Nash, alongside fellow founders Stephen Stills and Graham Nash. After the trio performed together in 1968, they discovered their voices harmonized well and decided that they needed to form a band and keep the good times going. The timing was perfect. David had just been asked to leave the Byrds, Stephen's band Buffalo Springfield had just broken up, and Nash left his band The Hollies the December prior to meeting his bandmates. Eventually, the trio branched out and invited Canadian treasure Neil Young to be the 4th member, performing as Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. They were even a part of the very first Woodstock Festival in 1969. At the end of a tour in the mid-70s, the band split following some tension behind the scenes. They reconciled for the music and have gotten together a few times over the years, sometimes with Young, sometimes without. Through it all, David gave 100% and the music showcased that effort. Unfortunately, earlier this year, Crosby fell ill with a lung infection and passed in his sleep. Before passing, he had been inducted into the Hall of Fame with his fellow bandmates and will always be remembered for his killer pipes and thick mustache. Number 2. Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck was a British musician who first began rising to stardom in the early 1970s after forming the band Night Shift. Eventually that band broke up, but Beck went on to have an awesome solo career, eventually landing him 8 Grammy Award wins, the first being Best Rock and Roll Instrumental Performance for Escape, a song from the album for Flash that was to accompany the movie of the same name. While his name may not be familiar to you, his guitar licks most certainly are. Jeff has contributed his talent to several top charting songs over the years, including Bon Jovi's Blaze of Glory solo album, and he played lead on Roger Waters' concept album Amused to Death, Red Shoes by Kate Bush, and just so many more. In 1992, his former band the Yardbirds was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he famously stated that he wasn't proud of a band that kicked him out. Beck continued to work as a solo artist right up until 2020, when he released a new single album in which he collaborated with Johnny Depp to cover John Lennon's song Isolation. The song came out only 1 month after the events of March 2020, so this cover really hit home for a lot of people. Beck passed away from bacterial meningitis infection in January of this year, taking both his talent and his passion with him. And at number 1, Burt Bacharach. My first introduction to Burt was at the age of 8 when I watched the movie Austin Powers International Man of Mystery. Austin and his date/fellow agent are just enjoying dinner on a double-decker bus in London when Austin gestures and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Burt Bacharach." And suddenly there is Burt, playing just a massive piano and singing, "What the world needs now is love, sweet love." Ooh, this moment has lived rent-free in my brain ever since and sparked the random taste in music that I still have to this day. Who is Lizzo? Give me Engelbert Humperdinck any day. Of course, Burt was best known by many people for his musical chops, and it's been said that Burt was one of the most important and influential figures in the pop music industry since the early 1950s. 1950s. Over the years, Burt collaborated with several well-respected musicians like Tom Jones and Dusty Springfield, and he received 6 Grammys, 3 Academy Awards, and 1 Emmy for his primetime special Singer Presents Burt Bacharach, a live TV taping in which Barbra Streisand appeared and they played music, discussed their careers, and sang their favorite song. Burt was tickling the keys till the day he passed, collaborating with many composers and lyricists over the years. He even composed and arranged an original score for a film called A Boy Called Poe at the age of 88 years old. In February of this year, Burt passed away at the age of 94 and closed his piano lid for good. But between him, David, and Tina, heaven's gonna have some pretty solid music this year.
Starting off this countdown, we have Natalie Wood and Carol Wayne. Both Natalie and Carol were American actresses who died in similar drowning deaths. On November 29, 1981, 43-year-old actress Natalie Wood was found dead floating face down in the Pacific Ocean wearing her nightgown and socks. A couple days prior, Natalie, her husband Robert Wagner, Christopher Walken, and yacht captain Dennis Davern headed out on a yacht. The thing is, no one really knows what happened to her. Some say she slipped off the deck and fell into the water, while others are convinced that Wagner or Walken had something to do with it or that they do know what happened. In January of 1985, Carol Wayne was also vacationing with her friends and her boyfriend. She got in a fight with her boyfriend and decided to head down to the beach. 3 days later, her body was found floating in the water. Her death was ruled accidental. She was 42 at the time. So both actresses died by drowning, both got in a fight with their partners before they were found dead, and both were similar in age. Moving on, at number 9, we have the overdoses. A number of famous individuals have died alone in their bathrooms from doses. We got Lenny Bruce, Robert Pastorelli, and Philip Seymour Hoffman. All 3 men were in their 40s when this happened. Bruce passed in 1966 at the age of 40. Robert passed in 2004 at the age of 49, and Philip passed away in 2014 at the age of 46. In our 8th spot, we have The Conductors. It's believed that the Tristan und Isolde opera by Richard Wagner is cursed. First off, when Wagner created it, everyone hated it, and his wife left him, and one of the leads got ill during rehearsals, and another died after starring in it. Then you have The Conductors. Well-known celebrity conductor Felix Model was conducting the show's 100th performance in 1911 when he collapsed of a heart attack. 11 days later, he died. 57 years later, Joseph Kielberth, who had worked for TV shows and has produced work for some of the best opera houses in Europe, also died at the exact same opera house in the same spot in the exact same way. He too suffered a heart attack and died. How eerie is that? Moving on to number 7, we have David Bowie, Alan Rickman, and Dale Griffin. Now, what did these 3 great men have in common? Well, they all died within a week of each other. Bowie passed away on January 10th of 2016 from cancer. 4 days later, Alan Rickman passed away from cancer as well. And I don't know about you, but he was a huge part of my childhood, so his passing really hit me hard. 3 days after Alan's passing, drummer Dale Griffin passed away. That was a hard week, not gonna lie. But it also got people thinking about this supposed curse, and that's that celebrity deaths happen in 3s. In this case, they all were male British artists. Not only that, but apparently The Simpsons predicted this. In 2013, The Simpsons published an episode where Bart and Homer are watching a British rom-com. In the show, the characters embrace while wrapped in a Union Jack flag. And while doing so, the song All the Young Dudes plays, which was sung by Dale's band. And guess what? This song was written and produced by David Bowie. Then later, Alan Rickman shows up as Severus Snape in the episode. Like, are you kidding me? What are the odds here? In our 6th spot today, we have the Superman curse. Now, I just finished talking about the celebrity trio death curse. Now, let's talk about another famous curse, and that's the Superman curse. So far, multiple actors who have played Superman have ended up dying. Even the actor Lee Quigley, who portrayed Superman as a baby, passed away. The other most recognizable Supermans are George Reeves and Christopher Reeve. On the 16th of June 1969, the LAPD reported that George had been shot in the head at some point between 1 and 2 in the morning. The circumstances around his death are very mysterious. Some say it was self-inflicted. Others say that he was murdered. Some say he was killed over an affair that he was having. Others say he had ties to the mafia. I don't know. Anyways, then we have Christopher Reeve. On October 10th, 2004, 2004, he passed away due to heart failure. And like I said, Lee Quigley also passed. There also was Bud Collier, hopefully I pronounced that right, sorry if I didn't, don't come for me. He provided his voice for radio and cartoon shows for years before passing at the age of 61. And 4 creators of the comics also died while working on them. Pretty wild, isn't it? We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Playboy Playmates curse. A number of Playboy Playmates have died at young ages under pretty unnatural circumstances. For example, we got Paige Young. At 30, she died of a dose. Several years later, Willie Ray died the same way. Same with Anna Nicole Smith. In 1967, Jane Mansfield died in a car crash. Carol Willis and Claudia Jennings also died in car accidents, and they were all under 30. Then we have the murders. In 1980, Dorothy Stratton was murdered by her husband, and in 1970, Ellen Louise was murdered in Florida. So, we all need to take some notes here. Don't become a playmate, don't become a Superman, and don't be an opera conductor. Coming in at number 4, we have Michael Kennedy and Sonny Bono. On December 31st, 1997, Michael Kennedy, son of Robert F. Kennedy, passed away during a skiing trip. He was skiing down a slope when he crashed into a tree. Almost a week later, the exact same thing happened to Sonny Bono. Michael was skiing in Aspen with his family, Sonny was skiing in California with his family. They both smashed into a tree in the afternoon, suffered from head injuries, and then died. In fact, that happened 6 days apart. Pretty creepy. In our 3rd spot today, we have Edward Kennedy and John McCain. These two were both former US senators and political figures, and they both died of the same cancer on the same day. Like what? Both men were diagnosed with the same form of a rare brain cancer. They both lived just over a year after being diagnosed. Both sadly died on the same day, which was August 25th, just 9 years apart. Like I said, it was a pretty rare form of brain cancer, so what are the odds that 2 US senators developed it out of all people? Coming in at number 2, we have Chester Bennington and Chris Cornell. Chester Bennington was an American singer, songwriter, best known as the lead vocalist of Linkin Park. One of his best friends was Chris Cornell, another American singer-songwriter known for Soundgarden and Audioslave. Well, on May 18th, 2017, Chris himself and took his own life. Chester was very hurt by this. He wrote a letter to him stating how much he missed and loved him and how inspired he was by him. 2 months later, on July 20th, 2017, which was Chris's birthday, Chester also took his life by hanging. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Lee family curse. Now, we've talked a lot about curses in today's video, and we're ending it off with another one. And that's the Lee family curse. So we're talking about Bruce Lee and his son, Brandon Lee. Bruce Lee passed away due to a brain aneurysm on July 20th, 1973. He managed to complete some filming for his movie Game of Death, but it wasn't finished. So 5 years later, they managed to complete the film using what little footage was available, and then they just kind of threw in some kind of random clips to fill in the gaps. They even used footage of Bruce Lee's actual funeral. In one scene, you got Bruce on set, and one of the actors he's on set with is an assassin, so he him with a real bullet instead of a blank. Well, that's pretty much how Bruce's son Brandon Lee died. 20 years later, while Brandon was filming The Crow, an actor fired a real bullet at him in place of a blank. Sadly, he passed away. At number 10, we have Michael Jackson. When the King of Pop unexpectedly passed away in 2009, the whole world would mourn the loss of Michael Jackson. After a long investigation, Michael's private physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, would be found responsible for Michael's passing. However, years after Michael's passing, fans and even his daughter Paris Jackson have put forth numerous rumors about what really happened to Michael. Paris has claimed that a lot of people wanted her father gone and that she was never going to stop seeking justice for it. Other accusations have claimed Michael even faked his passing because he was $500 million in debt, so he snuck away from the spotlight to avoid the payment. Whatever the case is, Michael still inspires many people through his music, and he will always remain the king of pop for centuries to come. At number 9, we have David Bowie. Just 2 days before David Bowie's passing, he released his final album, Black Star. Now, if you listen to the album, you would know that its themes relied heavily into the ideas of transformation after we pass. However, the conspiracies about David can be linked all the way back to 1972. People have claimed that David was even able to foretell the birth of
Kanye West by using Ziggy. And an even more persistent theory also focuses on Jack Stevens. Now, Jack Stevens was David's friend for years, and he learned about the passing of his friend. He felt like a part of him disappeared. Now, many of his fans have also claimed that David and Steven are actually the same person, as if you look at the two, they do have a lot of physical similarities. And Steven's TV comment was a coded message for fans to figure out that he was wrapping up his alter ego as David Bowie just to become Steven. Are you liking this video so far? If so, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. At number 8, we have Avril Lavigne. Known for her smash hit song of Skater Boy, the Canadian singer Avril Lavigne's fans have made up some pretty wild conspiracies that have been persisted on for the last 2 decades. Fans have been claiming that the pop star passed away and she was secretly switched out for a replacement. A group called Avril Rangers claimed that Avril passed away in her home not long after the release of her album Let Go. They would then go on to claim that Avril would be replaced by a lookalike named Melissa Vandella. The theories have claimed that at first the doppelganger was hired to confuse the paparazzi when Avril was out around the town. However, after Avril would pass, Melissa would step in for good. Now, the bizarre theory has definitely become popular in fan blogs. However, the two women have very different skin blemishes and clothing styles, so it's safe to say that this one is just a rumor. At number 7, we have Buddy Holly. In 1959, Buddy Holly would pass away with his fellow rock stars in an accident after the plane of the group they were traveling in crashed into an Iowa cornfield. However, since the accident, fans have come up with pretty outrageous theories about how the plane really went down. Many have claimed that Buddy was traveling with a piece of equipment, and this equipment is the reason behind why the plane went down. Now, eventually these rumors would make their way back to some of Buddy's loved ones, and they would start to struggle with the thought of these grisly theories. By 2007, Big Bopper's son was so sick of the rumors that he decided to hire someone to investigate him so he could finally set the family free from any allegations. At number 6, we have Elvis Presley. There are 2 theories that revolve around the theory that Elvis Presley is still alive, with reports of Elvis passing being sealed until 2027 at the request of Elvis' father. We won't really know what truly happened to the King of Rock until then. Now, one of these theories supposes that Elvis was abducted by aliens. This first started to circulate after Ray Stevens released a song called I Saw Elvis in a UFO. The song definitely started to make people think that Elvis was still alive, and that spaceman took him from his home in 1977 after years of helping him on Earth. Another theory fans have and speculate is that Elvis was secretly working for the FBI. Apparently, Elvis got so deep into his job with the FBI that they would have to place him into witness protection just to keep his status as an agent a secret. This theory would later be revealed as a lie after the agency released more than 750 reports and none of them were linked to Elvis. At number 5, we have Steve Jobs. Since Steve Jobs' passing, social media posts have started to circulate around the web. In photos, people have been claiming that someone who looks identical to Steve Jobs has been living in Egypt. Now, these posts quickly went viral, and it made people wonder if the tech guru was still alive. Now, Steve is from Syrian descent. All of his life, he has had a love for the Middle East, so it's pretty easy to see why the internet spewed the idea that Steve might be living in Egypt and that he was still alive. In 2016, a doppelganger would also pop up in Rio, and it would have Brazilians wondering if he was secretly living there. However, while his fans haven't stopped claiming that they have seen him all over the world, Steve's legacy will definitely live on through Apple's text offering. At number 4, we have John Lennon. When John Lennon passed away in 1980, there was a lot of speculations as to what happened to the star. While Steve Light claimed the passing was a production of an insane government plot that Stephen King was actually responsible for the crime, instead of Mark David Chapman, Steve's theories was so crazy that he would even have it published in pamphlets alleging his fact-free accusations, and he even decked out a van and drove it around just to draw attention to his cause. However, law enforcement has never been moved by Steve's theories, as Mark would plead guilty to the crime back in 1981. As Steve's theories have taken on new energy on the internet, very few people actually chosen to take this bizarre claim seriously. At number 3 we have Aaliyah. Aaliyah was a rising star that passed away way too soon. However, not everybody has been on the same page since her passing. While it's said that the plane crashed due to it being overloaded, Mary J. Blige would come out to say in 2005 that after she heard about the accident, that's when she discovered she would be next. Mary would then go on to say, "I don't know how or when, but I'm next." Now, Mary's theory would then spark conspiracy that Aaliyah's passing wasn't an accident and someone was responsible for it. And with recent information coming to light about R. Kelly and Aaliyah's relationship and the pressure R. Kelly was putting on her, many fans now think R. Kelly was responsible for the crash. Of course, nothing ever bad came to Mary, however, because of her shocking interview, the storyline continues to have us all wonder what really happened to Aaliyah. At number 2 we have Bill Hicks. Bill Hicks was definitely a rebellious child who became a huge beloved stand-up comedian. Sadly, the star was never able to become a huge superstar, as he would pass away in 1994 at the age of 32 years old. Since it's been suspected that Bill is still alive and that he faked his passing to become Alex Jones. The theory claims that since Bill and Alex have some pretty common enemies, especially in mainstream media, that they have to be the same person. However, it's clearly just a rumor, as Bill was funny and sarcastic and Alex doesn't even have the knowledge to possess these qualities. There is a very odd resemblance between the two, I'll give the fans that, but I just don't see why the internet is so desperate to prove that Bill is Alex Jones. So what do you think about this conspiracy, and let me know in the comments below. And at number 1 today we have Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was a stunning woman that many still look up to today. However, since her passing in 1962, at the age of 32, there's been several conspiracies that have arisen around it. The first theory is that Robert Kennedy was responsible for Marilyn's passing so he could cover up their affair and secrets that she knew she could ruin his career with. The second theory is that the mafia wanted her gone to hurt Kennedy so he would back off of his crusade against the mob. And the final theory is that she was going to expose the truth behind UFOs, so the government hushed her because she was threatening to leak classified information. While many theories are connected to each other, it really makes you wonder if any of them are true.
Number 10. Tina Turner. She was simply the best, and better than all of the rest. Tina Turner is considered one of the original queens of rock and roll. Between the early 1950s and the mid-2000s, Tina Turner was ripping her way through country after country, delivering hit after hit. What's Love Got to Do With It, Simply the Best, Acid Queen, and those are just the songs we were gifted with during her time as a solo artist. Before divorcing her evil ex, Ike Turner, the couple would perform together as Ike and Tina. Tina's real name was Anna Mae Bullock. The name Tina was actually forced upon her by Ike as a form of control. As many now know, Ike was absolutely horrible to Tina and did things that we can't talk about on this channel, which is why after so many years of overcoming obstacle after obstacle, it crushed the world when Tina was taken from us at the age of 83 on May 24th, 2023. She will always be remembered as a pure soul with a voice of gold. We had so much respect for this woman. She took a name that was meant to bring her down and she turned it into a legend. Number 9. Jerry Springer. Well, our guest today may be a little controversial, but what the heck. Those were words surely spoken many times by the man that they call Jerry Springer, a name that surely sparks the visual of a fight breaking out on stage and a low-grain camera capturing it all in front of a live studio audience. Ah, the good old days. He hosted the Jerry Springer Show from 1999 to 2016, broadcasting over 1,900 episodes for our viewing pleasure. For anyone that doesn't know, Jerry was known for bringing controversial figures on his show to either discuss or confront the situation surrounding their presence. He's brought in men with white cloaks, people who've married horses. The spectrum of his guests is wide, which is why his show was so much fun to watch. It was sad when news broke of his death in 2023 following a long, strenuous battle with pancreatic cancer. Here's hoping that wherever he is, he's not in the middle of an onstage brawl. Number 8. Michael Lerner. You may recognize Michael's face from a number of classic flicks. He was the bank manager in the movie Blank Check, a film that is so weird and underrated it is like peak Disney. If you haven't seen it, just go watch it and then come back. He may have received an Academy Award nomination for his role as Jack Lipnick in the film Barton Fink back in the day, but I think we all know where this guy is from. He starred in the holiday classic Elf as Fulton Greenway, a big boss at a publishing company that just won't get off of James Caan's back. back. He instilled a sense of anxiety towards every boss that I've ever had, as he was the last man you would want to disappoint. Seriously, this man just loves his deadlines. In April of this year, Michael passed away following brain complications caused by seizures. His spirit will live on every year though when we cozy up during the holiday seasons to watch the classic Christmas flick Blank Check. Seriously, go watch it, it's so good. Number 7. Lance Reddick. Good evening, Mr. Wick. Welcome to the Continental. Lance Reddick starred in many TV movies and made small appearances on sitcoms in his early days of acting, but he first broke onto the big screen starring as Anton Lafarge in the 1998 film Great Expectations, a modernization of Charles Dickens' classic story of the same name, following a painter in New York City pursuing his childhood love. The film starred Ethan Hawke in the leading role, Gwyneth Paltrow, Hank Azaria, Robert De Niro, but it was Lance that stole the show. He went on to star in several big budget projects over the years, eventually landing a role on the hit TV thriller series The Wire as Cedric Daniels. He starred alongside actors like Keanu Reeves, Denzel Washington, Channing Tatum, but the attention was always drawn to him for every moment he was on screen. Earlier this year, a congestive heart disease took Lance from this world at the age of 61 years old. Yeah, that's right, this guy was in his 60s. Luckily for us, there was one movie left to be released following Lance's passing. White Men Can't Jump just landed on Disney Plus, with Lance starring as one of the main characters, Benji, so at least we get to check that out. Number 6. Richard Belzer. In the criminal justice system, people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups: the police who investigate crime and the district attorneys who prosecute the offenders. These are their stories. This is the introduction to one of my father's favorite TV shows of all time, Law and Order. Since the day I was brought home, the legendary intro and song was constantly on my screen. I practically grew up with the Special Victims Unit. Richard Belzer played John Munch, a retired detective who returns to the force as a sergeant assigned to the SVU. Richard played Munch for 326 episodes before the show was eventually taken off the air in 2016. That didn't mark the end of Richard's acting days, however, as he went on to star in the popular Robert De Niro pick The Comedian in 2016, in which he played a fictionalized version of himself. Unfortunately for SVU fans, Richard passed away in February of this year following years of respiratory and circulatory complications. It looks like crime in the afterlife will never go unpunished again. If there is crime, I don't know, do people like still steal stuff when they pass? Number 5. David Crosby. While this last name sounds familiar, David shares absolutely no relation to the hockey legend Sidney, which is shocking because he has like 6 kids, so you'd think one of them would be a hockey player. David Crosby made up a third of the legendary folk rock group Crosby, Stills, Nash, alongside fellow founders Stephen Stills and Graham Nash. After the trio performed together in 1968, they discovered that their voices harmonized extremely well and decided to form a full-on band. The timing was perfect. David had just been asked to leave the Byrds, Stephen's band Buffalo Springfield had just broken up, and Nash left his band The Hollies the December prior to meeting his new bandmates. Eventually, the trio branched out and invited Canadian treasure Neil Young to be their 4th member, performing as Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. They were even a part of the very first Woodstock Festival in 1969. At the end of a tour in the mid-70s though, the band split following some tension behind the scenes. They reconciled for the music and have gotten together a few times over the years, sometimes with Young and sometimes without him. Through it all, David gave 100%, and the music showcased that effort. Unfortunately, earlier this year, Crosby fell ill with a lung infection and passed in his sleep. Before passing, he had been inducted into the Hall of Fame with his fellow bandmates and will always be remembered for his killer pipes and his thick mustache. Number 4. Burt Bacharach. My first introduction to Burt was at the age of 8 when I watched the movie Austin Powers International Man of Mystery. Austin and his date/fellow agent are enjoying dinner on a double-decker bus in London when Austin gestures to the side and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Burt Bacharach." Suddenly, there's Burt, playing a massive piano and singing "What the world needs now is love, sweet love." This moment has lived rent-free in my brain ever since, and sparked the random taste in music that I still have to this day. Like, who's Lizzo? Give me Engelbert Humperdinck any day. Although, of course Burt was best known by many people for his musical chops. It's been said that Burt was one of the most important and influential figures in the pop music industry since the early 1950s. Over the years, Burt collaborated with several well-respected musicians like Tom Tom Jones and Dusty Springfield. He received 6 Grammys, 3 Academy Awards, and 1 Emmy for his primetime special, Singer Presents Burt Bacharach, a live TV taping in which Barbra Streisand appeared. They played music, discussed their careers and favorite songs. Burt was tickling the keys till the day he passed, collaborating with many composers and lyricists over the years. He even composed and arranged an original score for a film called A Boy Called Poe at the age of 88 years old. And in February of this year, Burt passed away at the age of 94 and closed his piano lid for good. Between him, David, and Tina, heaven's going to have some solid music, that is for sure. Number 3, Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck was a British musician who first began rising to stardom in the early 1970s after forming the band Night Shift. Eventually that band broke up, but Beck went on to have an awesome solo career, eventually landing him 8 Grammy Award wins, the first being Best Rock and Roll Instrumental Performance for Escape, a song from the album Flash that was to accompany the movie of the same name. While his name may not be familiar to you, his guitar licks most certainly are. Jeff has contributed his talent to several top charting songs over the years, including Bon Jovi's Blaze of Glory solo album. He played lead on Roger Waters' concept album Amused to Death and Red Shoes by Kate Bush, and just so many more. I could keep going. In 1992, his former band the Yardbirds was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he famously stated that he wasn't proud of the band at all because he was not proud of a band that kicked him out. Beck continued to work as a solo artist right up to 2020 when he released a new single album in which he collaborated with Johnny Depp to cover John Lennon's song Isolation. The song came out only 1 month after the events of March 2020, so this cover really hit home for a lot of people. Beck passed away from bacterial meningitis infection in January of this year, taking both his talent and his passion with him. Number 2, Tom Sizemore. Tom first broke into the acting world in the 1989 thriller Blue Steel, starring Hollywood icon Jamie Lee Curtis in the leading role. Unfortunately for me, I only recognize him as a certain truck driver from an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia called The Gang Gets Stranded in the Woods, which, needless to say, was not the best example of his acting abilities. He would pop up in several big budget movies over the years, including Saving Private Ryan, Natural Born Killers, Pearl Harbor, almost always playing a strong, intimidating, macho type character. In March of this year, the truck driver with a penchant for pleasure passed away due to a brain aneurysm. However, throughout 2022, he starred in several projects, both low and big budget, so if you're a fan, just go hop on IMDb and binge, baby. And number 1, Ryuichi Sakamoto. I'm going to avoid saying his full name during this segment just in case I am butchering it. You may not recognize Ryu by his face, but how about his scores? And I'm not talking about football, I'm talking about music. While most of his work has predominantly taken place in Japan, he's been tapped by American directors time and time again to lend a hand on creating the musical backdrops for the entire project. His work was showcased in movies like Femme Fatale, The Revenant, and The Last Emperor. His scores set an eerily beautiful tone to whatever project was presented to him. The film The Revenant starred Leo DiCaprio as a frontiersman fighting for his life in the wilderness following a bear attack. The movie featured little dialogue, but the music backing the project carried the entire thing right through to the end. Sure, Leo won an Oscar that year, but Ryu should be praised for making the movie watchable in the first place. In March of this year, Ryu passed away following a long and difficult battle with throat cancer. His passion lives on through his hundreds of successful projects that are still able to be enjoyed to this day. So, hey, go check him out.
Coming in number 10 today, we have Mac Miller. Mac Miller appeared on the hip-hop scene in 2007 with his debut studio album Blue Side Park, and it became the first independently distributed debut album to top the US Billboard 200 since 1995. Unfortunately, the star would pass away in his California home in San Fernando Valley back in 2018 due to substances. Mac had been publicly struggling with substances over the years, and it was reported he was on the road to recovery before he relapsed. Ryan Revis would then be sentenced to 10 years and 11 months for supplying the rapper with the substances. When fans and friends found out about Mac's passing, the world would be devastated, including his former girlfriend Ariana Grande. In a heartbreaking tribute to Miller, Ariana would write, "I can't believe you aren't here anymore. I really can't wrap my head around it. I'm so mad, I'm so sad, I don't know what to do. I'm sorry I couldn't fix it or take your pain away. I really wanted to. Later, Mac's family would even start a charity called the Mac Miller Circle Fund to help Mac's name carry on while supporting young musicians with resources to help them realize their full potential through exploration, expression, and community. Number 9. Juice WRLD. Juice WRLD was a talented young rapper and singer whose career was taking off, getting his inspiration for his stage name from Tupac's performance in the 1992 film Juice. Juice WRLD was on his way to the top, and when the world found out about the rapper and that he had passed away from a seizure in Chicago's Midway Airport, the world would start to mourn his passing. Later, according to TMZ, Juice's flight from California had just landed. After the rapper and his entourage deplaned, witnesses would say he started to have a seizure while he was walking through the airport. Juice WRLD's major label career was starting just after he climbed to the top of the charts in 2018. His first huge hit came in the summer of 2018 with his song Lucid Dreams, which made it to the number 2 spot on the billboards. Then his song with Lil Yachty, All Girls Are the Same, it also became a huge success. In fact, that it was the song's success that drew the attention of Interscope Records, which signed him to a multi-million-dollar contract 1 month after releasing his first studio album. Goodbye and good riddance. Juice released the 2-track EP Too Soon as a tribute to Lil Peep and X. Juice was also featured on Travis Scott's enormous Astroworld album, singing the hook on the track No Bystanders. Hey my little peaches, are you liking this video so far? If so, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Coming in number 8, we have Takeoff. Takeoff was 1/3 of the platinum selling rap group Migos, and after one fatal night, he would pass away at the age of 28. Since his untimely passing, it has brought a great deal of pain and sorrow to so many lives, and his group members feel like they are in a dark place as they struggle to deal with the loss of their family member. On November 1st, 2022, Takeoff's name would start to make headlines after he suddenly passed away in Houston after attending a private party which had around 40 to 50 guests. According to multiple witnesses, Takeoff and his uncle Quavo were playing dice when the incident occurred. Then TMZ would later publish an audio recording where Quavo could be seen talking to the operator and asking what a nurse on the scene needed to do to potentially help save Takeoff's life before police and ambulance arrived. Losing Takeoff was a huge loss in 2022, and the world is definitely not the same without his sense of peacefulness and aura. Number 7, Avicii. Avicii was one of the pioneer artists which bridged the gap between electronic and country music. As a DJ, music producer, and remixer, among other titles, during his time on Earth, he blessed us with record hits like The Nights, Hey Brother, and Wake Me Up to show his influence and uniqueness in EDM. Being named Tim Burling at birth, he chose the stage name Avicii, meaning the lowest level of Buddhist hell, which he began his music career with because his real name was already being used on MySpace. In 2011, he would then shoot to fame when he released his single Levels. And when he debuted his album True in 2013, it would feature his award-winning hit Wake Me Up, which topped music charts all over the world, and it peaked at the number 4 spot in the United States. Then on April 20th, 2018, the news of Avicii's passing would then be plastered all over the media, all over the world. 6 days later, his family would then confirm that Avicii took his own life, and they explained in a statement that he could no longer go on and that he wanted to find peace, and since it's left so many puzzles and questions surrounding his passing. Number 6, Amy Winehouse. Amy Winehouse was Britain's greatest rising talent. With 2 albums and several Grammys under her belt, Amy was poised to stay on top, but she couldn't compete with her alcohol addiction, which would end up being the reason behind her passing in July of 2011. According to the Daily Mail, Amy spent her final hours drinking and watching YouTube videos of herself before passing away from alcohol poisoning. The massive amount she drank would cause her to stop breathing and fall into a coma. Her security guard who lived with her said she seemed to be her usual bubbly self the night before, and he discovered that she passed away the following day. Winehouse previously had been battling with an alcohol addiction, and she was reportedly sober for 12 to 13 days before her passing, but just 3 days before she passed, she started drinking again because she was bored. According to the Rolling Stone profile on her tragic life, the years leading up to her passing were difficult. She was reportedly in and out of rehab for substance abuse, and she landed assault charges for fighting, and she often emerged in public looking awful with sores on her face and scratches all over her body. Her father would also state that Amy smoking landed her in the early stages of emphysema, and working also became difficult for her as she was unable to secure the proper paperwork to travel to the United States to perform. Number 5, Heath Ledger. Dark Knight star Heath Ledger was one of Hollywood's most respected young actors at the time of his sudden passing in January 2008. According to US Weekly, his passing was due to acute intoxication. The list of substances found in He's system during his toxicology results were lengthy. Years later, the public would then learn that his sister Kate warned the star of mixing so many prescriptions together. When his father Kim told the Daily Mail, his sister was on the phone with him the night before telling him not to take prescription medication with sleeping tablets, and then he said, Katie, I'm fine now, I know what I'm doing." His father would then know Heath had no idea what he was doing. Kim would also say that he loved his son dearly before saying it's totally his fault, it was no one else's, he reached for the substances, he put them in his system. You can't blame anyone in that situation. That's hard to accept because I love him so much and was so proud of him. In the months before his passing, Heath would describe his restless state to the New York Times after completing Dark Knight, and he said, "I couldn't stop thinking, my body was exhausted and my mind was still going." Number 4, Tupac. Rap star Tupac was quickly building a mega music empire before his passing on September 13th, 1996. Tupac was the casualty behind a drive-by incident in Las Vegas after 4 clippings struck him in the chest on September 7th. After being rushed to a nearby medical center for care, doctors would remove his right lung to give him a slim chance of living. Tupac would then ultimately pass away due to respiratory failure and cardiopulmonary arrest. According to attending officer Chris Carroll, at the scene of the crime, Tupac's final moments were not so kind as he told CNN, "He looked at me, he took a breath to get words out, and he opened his mouth, and then the words came out, F you." For years, the troubled and often controversial rapper's passing has plagued fans in the media. With no suspects charged, Tupac's passing has largely remained a mystery. And while Tupac's former business partner and friend, Suge Knight, claims he knows who is responsible for Tupac's passing, he's also claimed that it was supposed to be him in Tupac's place, as Knight claims his ex-wife, Sharita, and former Death Row security head, Reggie Wright Jr., were out to get him, but got the wrong guy. Number 3. Selena. Mexico's leading lady in the early 90s was Selena. At the tender age of 23, she amassed thousands of fans all over Central and North America. But her reign came to a screeching halt after her former employee and president of her fan club, Yolanda Saldivar, took Selena's life at a motel at Corpus Christi, Texas in March 1995. Selena's father, Abraham, would then explain to the New York Times that Yolanda had been fired from her job at the family's clothing store over missing money 3 weeks before the incident. And then, as the story goes, Selena asked for the money back and they arranged to meet up, and Yolanda would take Selena's life, and then she would enter into a 10-hour standoff with police. Then in March 2017, 22 years after Selena's passing, the star's family remembered her, and her sister would tell Entertainment Tonight, "Early on when she passed away, people told me that time heals your heart, and I couldn't understand that. It's not so much that time heals your heart, it's more that it helps you deal with what's been put in front of you." Selena's father would then say, "We're programmed emotionally to accept that older folks go first, but when your child goes first, it's a different kind of pain." Number 2. Sharon Tate. On August 9th, 1969, Sharon Tate and 4 others would gruesomely lose their lives in Sharon's Los Angeles homes after they fell into the hands of the Manson family cult. While many people have never heard of her, Sharon was an actress that snagged a number of roles in films. She hadn't had her big break yet, and her grisly passing at 8.5 months pregnant, however, immortalized her as one of the cult's most tragic victims. The day before her passing was like any other. She rented a mansion in California with friends. She laid out by the pool and complained about her husband, who is Roman Polanski. And she went out for dinner. At the end of the night, she and 3 others returned to the house, and none of them saw the 4 followers of Charles Manson as they approached the property in the wee hours of August 9th, 1969. While the followers were not specifically targeting Sharon or her absent husband, Manson had told them to go to the house because of its former occupant, producer Terry Melcher, as he declined to get Manson the record deal he craved. And coming in number 1 today, we have Biggie Smalls. On March 10th, 1977, violence would rage out once again, and this time it would take out Brooklyn rapper Biggie Smalls. Being 24 at the time, Biggie would become a victim of a drive-by in Los Angeles. As the story goes, Biggie was exiting a party, and while he was waiting outside of his SUV, that's when a car pulled up and took him out. Just years earlier, he would confess in an interview that he was fearful that he could be taken at any moment, and he was scared, and he even hid things under his mattress in an attempt to feel safe while he was sleeping at home. 20 years later, Biggie's mother, Valletta Wallace, would come out to say she knows who took her son's life. She would then go on to blame the Los Angeles Police Department for dragging their feet, and she even said, "I genuinely believe the LAPD knows exactly who did it too." Then she would tell the Daily Mail they've done their investigation, but they refuse to move forward. "I don't know why they haven't arrested who was involved. It seems to me it's one giant conspiracy." Biggie's short life and rise to fame was then imagined on the silver screen for the 2009 film Notorious, that was directed by George Tillman Jr., and it starred big-name actors such as Angela Bassett and Derek Luke, and it also earned a host of nominations as well as an applause from Biggie's fans. At number 10, we have Aaron Carter. After Aaron Carter's passing, TMZ has reported that Aaron didn't leave behind a will, and now the state of California will have to decide on who will inherit Aaron's estate. According to sources, Aaron was advised to make a will by his attorney, especially because he has a child who depends on him. However, Aaron never got around to it. Now, Aaron's son Prince will not be left behind without anything, as California law states that when someone passes and leaves behind a child, that child will inherit the parent's estate. However, Aaron not being in a good place financially and his house being on the market, his son will have security in any equity the sale brings in, but it may be a while before the courts make their final decision and before the property actually sells. At number 9, we have Jimi Hendrix. Now, Jimi Hendrix passed away unexpectedly in September of 1970. Without having a will to his estate, it still remains contested in various legal battles. Despite Jimi fathering 2 children, Jimi's father, Al Hendrix, legally denied the children any benefit from the estate and became the sole heir. In 2002, after Al's passing, he would leave behind the entire estate to his stepdaughter, Janie Hendrix, and he would leave out Jimi's brother, Leon Hendrix, completely. Leon would go on to say that the reason he was left out of the inheritance was because of Janie's influence over his father, and she had him rewrite the will to leave him out. Leon would then go on to contest the will, however, the courts would deny his claims, and now more than 5 decades later, Jimi's passing and the legal battle over his estate still continues, and his estate is now worth more than $175 million. Hey Peaches, are you enjoying this video so far? If so, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. At number 8, we have Bob Marley. When Bob Marley passed away in 1981, he famously refused not to write a will because it went against his beliefs. Under Jamaican law, when someone passes away, 10% of their assets go to the widow immediately, and the widow would then gain access to an additional 45% over their lifetime. The remaining amount is then divided equally among the children. At the time of Bob's passing, he was married to Rita Marley, and he had 11 children with several different women, and his estate was worth $11.5 million. Although the distribution of Bob's fortune should have been straightforward, some family members deemed Jamaica's laws unfair. Today, after decades of legal battles disputing how to divide the estate, 4 of his children now manage Bob Marley's estate as it continues to earn money through various Marley-themed products. In 2020 alone, Bob Marley's name earned about $14 million. At number 7, we have Pablo Picasso. When Pablo Picasso passed away in 1973 at the age of 91, he left behind about 45,000 pieces of art and no will. At the time of his passing, Picasso had 4 children with 3 women, so it took 6 years just to divide his assets equally, especially when it came to continuous negotiations between his kids, wives, and mistresses. Dividing his estate would become messy, complicated, and frankly, it was pretty much a disaster. A court-appointed auditor in charge of evaluating all of Picasso's assets would come to the conclusion that Picasso was worth around $100 to $250 million. Besides his art, Picasso's heirs were vying for the rights to license his image rights. The family would then enter into a bitter legal battle over his estate from 1973 to 1979, and the case would close $30 million in legal fees just to settle. However, things wouldn't stay calm for long, as the heirs would soon begin to battle over the rights to Picasso's name and image. By the mid-90s, Claude Picasso would create Picasso's administration, which would manage the heirs' jointly owned property, control control the rights to reproductions of Picasso's work, and authorized merchandising licenses for the artist's work, name, and image. At number 6, we have Michael Jackson. Although his will would later be discovered, it would be considered invalid by several of his family members. On the will, it would state that his attorney, John Branca, and music executive John McClain were named the executors of Jackson's estate. But Janet Jackson and the pop star's other siblings took the case to court and stated that the two had no claim to the estate. Michael's mom, Katherine Jackson, would then withdraw her petition and would ask to be put in charge of her son's estate. However, Michael would state in his will that his mother would become guardian of his children and their estates, and she would also become the beneficiary of a trust Michael set up for them. At number 5, we have Amy Winehouse. Amy Winehouse left behind an estate worth $4.66 million following her passing in 2011. Documents would show that the singer left behind assets totaling more than $6.7 million. However, only $4.66 million would remain after paying off her taxes. Since Amy didn't leave behind a will, the courts decided that her money would go to her parents. The documents shown later would also state that Amy's father, Mitch Winehouse, would be the administrator of the singer's estate, and that nothing would go to her ex-husband, Blake Fielder Civil, who she divorced in 2009. However, that wouldn't stop her ex-husband from attempting to take a grab at the late singer's money after he demanded a lump sum to be paid out as a monthly allowance 8 years later after her passing. Amy's family has since stated that they were appalled by his actions and that he has no rights to her estate. And at number 4, we have Prince. Following Prince's unexpected passing in 2016, his siblings will later come out to state that the singer did not have a legitimate will in place, and it would take 6 years just to sort out his $156 million estate. After court filings suggested that Prince's estate would be worth around $200 million, after a 6-year battle, the courts would state that Prince LLC would now be held by music publishing company Prime Wave after they bought out his 3 siblings. And the bank that was assigned by the court to administrate the estate affairs, Commercia Bank and Trust, was to get $3 million to pay for the cost and expenses associated with closing, and the leftover would be split between Prince Oat Holdings LLC and Prince Legacy LLC, which would consist of his 3 half-siblings. At number 3, we have Kurt Cobain. Just before Kurt Cobain's passing, he would state to his entertainment lawyer, Rosemary Carroll, that he wanted to divorce Courtney Love and take her out of his will, which would make Kurt's current will at the time invalid, and it would lead to legal battles between Courtney and his Nirvana bandmates. Now, most of Kurt's wealth would be inherited by Courtney and his daughter Frances after the courts made the decision that they were going to follow Kurt's original will. Courtney would then inherit only 2/3 of the inheritance after Frances was given 37% of Kurt's overall wealth. In 2006, Love would then go on to sell and publish the rights to Kurt's estate, which included 98% of the rights to Nirvana's music. When Frances turned 18, she then took control of her trust funds, and Courtney would sell her daughter the rights to Cobain's names and likeness for a reported $2.75 million from her trust fund. And at number 2, we have Chadwick Boseman. When Chadwick Boseman passed away in 2020, he didn't have a will in order by the time of his passing. Being worth $4 million at the time, he left behind plenty to be divided between his loved ones, and in October 2020, Chadwick's wife Taylor would request to be the administrator of his estate. However, she wanted limited authority. Chadwick's estate would have no disputes or conflicts between his remaining loved ones, which is relatively a positive outcome considering other families who have had members pass away without a will have been pretty negative. And at number 1 today, we have Steve McNair. When NFL quarterback Steve McNair passed away, he would leave behind no will. Later, his wife Michelle McNair requested to become the administrator to the estate, and it would be granted by the courts. She would then have 60 days to file an inventory of her late husband's assets with the courts so that they could see his assets and how they would be split among the family. Michelle would then go on to list herself and the couple's 2 sons as heirs to the estate. She then listed the quarterback's other children elsewhere since the court had no immediate proof that the children were legally Steve McNair's. His estate would then be at least worth $90 million, and since under Tennessee law, Michelle was able to receive 40% of the asset, and then the rest would be split among the 2 legitimate children equally.